Hey everyone, if you're anything like me, you've struggled with trying to keep skin detail as you upsize pictures. I've been in the same boat and I have tried so many ways, but I think I finally found one that actually works fairly well. So sit back and I'm going to try and show you guys how I did this and how you can reproduce it on your own. Please remember, I am not a professional, so the information I'm about to share is likely totally gobbledygook, and others with more experience probably have much better ways of doing things than I do. To get started, I want to show you my workflow. Now, my workflow involves multiple steps. This one is called step one, and it is the one that originally generates the image based on the prompt and does the first round of upscaling. There's actually going to be 4 rounds of upscaling for each image. So let's get started with step one. I'm using ComfyUI and I'm using Stable Swarm. So you can see I've got ComfyUI Workflow Editor here. And if we zoom in, you can see it's some pretty basic steps if you've actually used ComfyUI before. And I know some of you have not, so this might get a little confusing and I'll go over everything. Basically, we've got our load checkpoint here, which is going to load our model. And, I've got a lot of models. So pick whichever one. It doesn't matter. They pretty much all work here, and everything seems to do fine. You've got your clips here, positive and negative. You've got your case sampler. I'm going in here on these images. These were all done with a config of 7, steps of 40. I just did a random seed and then picked, I did like 2 or 3 and picked one that was not totally, morphed and disgusting. 3 legs, 4 arms, that kind of stuff. So I didn't do any kind of photo touch-ups or anything. All the images you see are straight upscaled images. They have had no touch-ups in Photoshop or anything like that. Okay, so this whole process right here, from load checkpoint, the clips, empty latent image, the case sampler, the decode, and the save image, that's your default ComfyUI workflow. Okay. So anything that comes in, this is going to generate your initial image out. And then down here, I've added in a couple of Loras. You can do these on your own. You can not add them. I recommend the add detail one just because it does help. But like the Jugger Sin XL here, or Hooger Sin XL, depending on what language you're speaking. That one's totally optional, and actually I didn't use that on several of the ones in there. So the other one here that's going to be kind of interesting is this one, and this one makes a lot of this possible. There's actually 2 elements that make all this possible. This polyhedron all SDXL safe tensors. Now this one is available on Civit AI, although the version on Civit AI is trained to 4 epochs. If you do his Patreon for $5, you can get the 10 epoch one, which is the one I'm using here, so it's probably a little bit better. So we go through, we generate our image, and now you'll notice here that I actually pull the model and the clip from the Loras before I get to this polyhedron all SDXL. This one here is actually responsible for a lot of the skin detail. This one does freckles and things like that. And you'll notice I've got a very low strength on it. It doesn't need much. 0.25 is about as high as I go. Anything over that, you start getting acne scars, things like that, which you may want, but you can also get some deformities and things. So usually I run this at 0.15 to 0.25. But you'll see here that my first image, I actually don't use that, and I don't generate with that in there. So I'm pulling my model and my clip out before then, generating the image out. I come over here, I'm going to decode that image, and I'm going to feed it into the Ultimate SD upscale. But then I'm going to feed the upscale, my model, with this Lora, and I'm also going to feed in a VAE, and I'm going to feed in new clips. Now you're going to ask, why am I feeding in a VAE? Well, I could pull it off of here, but if you do that, it doesn't work. So you're going to see that in almost every case, when you do a straight line here, you're going to get a muted image over here. It's going to come out, but it's going to look like it has lost contrast. And actually, somebody on the Reddit Stable Diffusion group suggested to me that I need to load that VAE separately and push it back in, even though my model may have a VAE in it. For whatever reason, it doesn't go from here into the SD upscale properly. So just load that up, pop that in there, takes care of that whole problem with losing color saturation through upscales. Okay, so what I've done again is I've generated my image. I'm going to go down here to the SD upscale, and I'm going to feed that SD upscale an updated version of my model that has this Lora, which is actually his skin Lora. It says polyhedron all SDXL, but he calls it his skin Lora, and it's trained for skin pores and things like that. You're also going to see that I don't feed in the same prompt. If you want to get rid of things like hallucinations, extra eyeballs, things like that, I've found that it's best not to feed in your original prompt and instead go with a prompt that is specifically set up for what you want to enhance on your up to scale. So I don't want to change the image, I only want to enhance it, right? So I'm feeding it highly detailed, 8K, ultra realistic, blah, 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 blah. Now, these two here are triggers for this one, for this Lora. So that's why you see those right there. If I am using this Juggerson XL, then my first clip would need to have the word probably cinematic in it because that's a trigger for this. If I wanted, I could also put cinematic down here and enhance that. I don't usually, because usually it takes off the first one and, carries over okay. But if you do have any triggers that you need to put in here, make sure they get put in here. You can even totally drop these. So if you wanted to pull your model and clip from up here and push them in here, you can do that. You can bypass Loras that you have in your first round into your SD upscale, and that actually can affect your quality and your performance coming out of it. So those are very important. Make sure you don't have your original prompt in here. Use something that is very specific to only updating your quality for your image. Okay. Finally, we have our upscale model, and this is another one that I found. It's 1x ITF skin diff detail light version 1. Hopefully he'll come up with more, but this actually does really good at adding skin detail in. It's not going to add freckles and stuff in, but it puts the texture into the skin. And that's also very important. So that gives you, that kind of texture that we all have on our skin. All right, so that is step one. And that's going to generate an image that's going to come out at 4 megapixels. So we're going to come out at 1664 by 2432. We went in as 832 by 1216. Obviously, change that to whatever you need. Now, a few things to note on the Ultimate SD upscale here. I'm upscaling by 2, doing a random seed, 30 steps, 7 config, your scheduler and sampler, denoise. I am denoising at 0.35. I don't know why every time I load this back up, it changes that to have some extra zeros there, but whatever. And some people will say, oh, that's really high. But is it? Because it works great. It's going to give you, I've tried lower and you don't get the extra detail. You can go higher sometimes even. I've even done a 0.4 and occasionally a 0.5, although that can get kind of funky. Just depends on what you're trying to get. But 0.35 for the first round seems to do really well. Now, model type, right now this is set to linear. You can do chess. If you're doing chess, most of the time you don't need a seam fix mode. Sometimes, depending on how your image is laid out, you may have issues where, say, your nose is split in half by a seam. Okay, and that can cause issues where you get maybe some hallucination or so forth. So changing your model type and putting your seam fix in there can help. And sometimes, on linear, it's going to split the image up and you've got problems there. So try both of them, see which one gets you the least. Chess by itself with none is going to go faster. Linear with half is going to come out pretty good, but it's going to take longer. And again, depends on where those seams lie, because sometimes those seams lie in just the wrong spot. Now, width and height on my tiles. So most people are going to do the width and height of their tile to be the same as their input image, or maybe even smaller. If at all possible, if you've got the RAM for it, set this to the size of your first upscale. Okay, so in this case, we're going 2x, and we're coming from 832, so that's 1664. We're coming from 1216, so that's 2432. The reason that is, that's going to get rid of your tiling, and it's going to give you a better result. Okay, it's going to make this more enhanced, so to speak, than if you have different tiles. And part of that's because it can better understand what the image is, right? If you tile it, it may not understand what it's doing, and it may cause you some loss of quality. Not that it's bad by any means. You can certainly do this at the original size and it will come out great. But if you have the video card memory for it, up that up. In my case, I'm pushing, I'm at 4060 Ti, so I've got 16 gigabytes, and this is pushing me to 15.7. So it's going to push it. If you've got a lower graphics card, you're going to have to turn these tiles down. But if you can, push them up, it will give you a better result. Okay, so that is step one. Now, when the image comes out of this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save it out, which I'm doing here, and I'm going to go over to Topaz. And I am going to upscale this with Topaz. And let me show you why I do it with Topaz instead of SD. SD has kind of a problem with losing a little bit of sharpness between upscale. So I could do an upscale cycle on this where I just upscale, and it'll come out and it will look pretty decent, but it is going to lose a little bit of sharpness. So here you can see I've got an upscale of 2, set it to low resolution on my Topaz, and there's other ones, this Giga AI, so forth, but this is the one I use. And you can see here that it's cleared up my eyes some, it's cleared up my whiskers some, it's cleared up my pores some. So I've got some texture there. And just doing this through Topaz between SD upscales really helps out. There's other online ones that you can use. They're absolutely great. A lot of them are free. I happen to have Topaz UI or AI, so that is the one I use. And it works beautifully, so I can't recommend it enough. But doing this step where I'm going to take it from 2x to 4x in Topaz AI really does help with the end result. Okay, so once I do that, then we're going to come back over to our ComfyUI, and we're actually going to go into step 2 here. And step 2 is basically the same as step 1, except for we're going to get rid of all the stuff that was up here, which is that first initial image generation. Instead, we're going to load an image from the hard drive. So I'm going to pick my image, and you can see here I had one that was Topaz underscore Topaz there, so that was my Topaz image. I'm going to feed it the same Loras. I'm going to feed it those same clips, right? So I've got my positive and negative there, and then over here on my upscale, I'm going to do the same thing I was doing before. You can see here I'm going to keep my tile width at the 1664 by 2432. Even though we've got a larger image now, my graphics card won't go any bigger than that. Just can't do it without going over to CPU memory, and I don't want to spend all week waiting on an image to get done. So this is going to cause it to tile, which no problem. Again, you can set this to chess, you can set this to none. Most of the time that's going to work for you. Sometimes you're going to get some artifacting there from the seams, so then you'd want to turn on half tile, or you'd want to go to linear and half tile. So that's all I can say there. Everything else is pretty much as straightforward as you get. We're using the same 1x ITF skin detail down here, and again I'm using the polyhedron all SDXL safe tensors Lora, and that's what I do. It's pretty simple, but it seems to work very well regardless of the image. It's great with freckles. I didn't put any samples in here with freckles, but it does do great with freckles, especially like redheads and so forth. So you've got that as well. And if you guys have any questions, please ask them. I'm free more than happy to answer what I can. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm learning this as I go and figuring it out, and sometimes I spend all day just trying to get one little thing working. So I give you this information in hopes that it helps somebody else, but don't take it as the word of God by any means. All right, talk to you guys later.